No, Mom did.
Okay, 8:30, let's call this meeting in order. Roll call, let the minutes show that everyone is here. We need an approval of the finance agenda. We can have that.
Second.
Jeff and Virginia. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
You all got a copy of the minutes. We need approval of those. Any questions or additions? All right, Bill.
Second.
And seconded by Tom. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right. Any public comment? I don't see anyone here from the public. Financial report. Paul, you want to take over?
Okay. We'll go a little out of sequence this time. We'll start with some good news. So Monday before Thanksgiving, I had a rating call with Moody's. It's supposed to be once a year. For some reason, I've had them twice a year recently. But this time, good news, we were actually upgraded from our previous A2 to back to A1. The last time that changed was in 2015, where we were downgraded, and at that time there was a negative outlook as well. So Moody's is one of two rating agencies, and A2 and A1, if that doesn't mean anything to you, think of it as a scale of 1 to 10. They each have their own lettered ratings. This is a number 5. We were at number 6 for the better part of 5 years. S&P actually has us at number 4. So this is good news, but me being me, I still think we're a little bit better than that. And the comment the analyst made was there was serious discussion or serious consideration, I forget his exact words, of actually moving us up a second one, which has put us back at 4, which is where I think we really ought to be. So good, we'll take it. And what that means is it's like your individual credit rating. So it's a measure of their opinion of how likely they are to pay back any loans they're taking out. So that would reflect the next time we take out debt, that would directly impact our interest rate. A bigger part of that was actually within there. I asked him about other municipalities' real estate and sales tax collections because we know ours are. I'm not sure with COVID going on what the rest of the world is doing. And he's a Midwest analyst, so across the Midwest, real estate taxes are generally on track to where they were previous years. And specifically with sales tax, urban areas tend to be suffering more. Rural areas tend to be improving, kind of like we are, which is, I guess, what was generically referred to as the Amazon effect. Is if you order from home, you're paying county tax here instead of buying it in Green Bay. Good to know, and because he does all the Midwest, as a sizable sample he had. Routes to recovery has been completely submitted. Last week, I did find out that everything we submitted was approved, so we'll have a check for 300 and whatever thousand coming. We had 2 towns, Pierce and West Kewaunee, that didn't completely spend theirs, so between the 2 of them, we got an additional $2,700. And I submitted more expenses than we had because with the formula with public safety, I could. So I hedged our bet a little bit just in case something else would be denied. So I over submitted. So we'll be covered for that too. Eventually, that should be coming, I think, by the end of the year. Financial review contingency, we'll talk about a little later because we have some requests coming up. Sales tax. Our latest payment was $103,000. Whoops, wrong page. $105,000. Our average, a little less than average, but this payment every year is down a little bit from our average. The payment we get for November next will be down some more, and then the last payment of the year, which covers December, is usually one of our 2 highest ones. So at this point, we're on pace where we could hit 1.3 million this year. We're about almost 60,000 ahead of last year.
105? No, what is the 105 versus last?
That one, last year at this time, we had 115. But it's not a clean cutoff, so it depends when people file. contingency sales tax. Okay. As far as the department financials, I'm not going to go through each one of them. We have 3 requests for transfers. We also have the highway who's discussing their specifically their winter maintenance at their meeting. So there were some I'll call near misses for lack of a better um, phrase. A lot of these have COVID related expenses, and the obviously the COVID funding hasn't arrived yet. I don't have the budget entry in yet. I was waiting for that last approval. So there are quite a few that have those, or looks like they may be over budget, but the COVID funding, once it's posted, will take care of that. So a few that look like they're gonna possibly short land conservation. There are grants on the way that will make up for it. County clerk, maintenance, health department all have COVID funding that's going to cover them. Probate expenses are up a little bit, but they have additional revenue this year. The revenue is quite a bit higher. Same thing with the register of deeds, and the veterans office is always close, and I think they'll be close, but under a budget again. So we'll cover the rest of them when we get to the transfers in the next item. Okay, one last thing is our website is now up and running. I like this website a lot. So the financial statements we send out to you each month are there. The vendor payment report is there and available. We also have the last 5 years of audited statements, ours and the highway departments. And then we have, I think, 5 or 6 years of budgets there as well. And if you remember the last website, when you try to download something, it seemed to take a long time. From my desk anyway, this is quite a bit faster. So I'm curious to know that somebody on the outside, if you notice it's faster as well. The budget being a big document, we have a label, it'll take longer, but it is an improvement over the last website. Speaking of budgets, I have some printed budget books. I don't print enough for everybody because not everybody wants one. If you want one, I have them here. Otherwise, again, the PDF version is on the website and it's always there and always available. I've got, I think, 5 here if you want them. If you don't, there are people who will. Thank you, Vanna.
On the website, in the packet, you included a very large print of sales tax for the whole state,
Oh,
but I couldn't read it. It's
Oh.
when you blow it up to look at the numbers, they're not legible. Is that on the website somewhere or not?
Scott sent that out, and I don't know if it is. It came straight from the state. If it's not there, I don't have it there. If it's not, I can find it and get you a better copy of that.
I couldn't read it.
And then our auditors were here this last week, and a good refreshing reminder of where we were, where we are. They used to come here for 2 weeks straight and not get all their work done. They scheduled a week this time. They were actually on site for 3 of the 5 days, and they're done. And I have 3 very small, simple questions to follow up on, down from a page and a half of questions that it was a few years ago even. So that's all I have for the financial report. Any questions? Okay. Medical, dental. I'll just point out that the medical through October on the Horton report shows $61,000 revenue over expenses. If you compare that to the general ledger, right now the general ledger shows a loss. And again, that's because included in Horton's report, they have the claims over stop loss. So we will be getting stop loss reimbursements for that. This report picks it up from Horton. The Horton report picks it up a lot faster than our general ledger does. And if we go to dental, dental is almost spot on. It's within a couple $100. So that's the year to date through October. And we're seeing in the amount of claims that the reduction in claims that we saw the first few months of COVID are picking up again. So that was predictable, and it has already started, even though the COVID isn't quite over. We're seeing more of those. Any questions on that? Okay, and the last part was the overtime report. Again, not much to say here other than in general, I will point out that the highway is down from last year. Human services is down considerably from last year. And if we look at the general fund departments as a group, they're up by about 4,000. But if you take out the health department, 4,000, we're down considerably. The sheriff's department is a big one. They're down a little bit from last year. Take out that $4,000 and we're down from where we were at this point last year. So obviously the health department has COVID issues and there's overtime. Grant is covering that. The county parks on there, you see overtime this year. That's all from Winter Park and the Winter Park time earlier this spring. There will, depending on the weather, there may be some of that in December as well. Any questions on the financial report?
The Winter Park that was budgeted.
It was not budgeted. The reason there's overtime now is because with the timekeeping system, as well as, well, the timekeeping system is the driver behind it. Along with the timekeeping system came correct following of our comp time policy. So we don't build up comp time to 50 hours when our limit is 24. So it reaches 24 hours and it has to pay it out as overtime. So it will be budgeted going forward. That's the first year that we've used the timekeeping system for that department.
We're just getting a better handle on our comp.
Much better. It was recorded or is kept track of by, supposedly, by each department individually. And I know for certain I can say that I don't believe that it was done well. You have 20 departments, you may have 20 ideas of what comp time is. The payroll system didn't keep track of it. The timekeeping system now does. And I put a limit in there, and if you reach the limit, it calculates the difference and pays it out the very next week.
So we're tracking all of that.
Tracking it, and we're sticking to our limits. And with that, we can now see when is it earned, where is it earned, and that, again, that limit came up about a year ago, not being high enough, and now it's fine. Okay. So next, oops, that's all I have for the financial report.
Okay. Want to go through budget transfers?
Next, we have 3 budget transfers. We'll start with the coroner. We've been talking about this for about 6 months now. Coroner's just been extra busy this year, not necessarily COVID related. Actually, I've got his exact words here. Most of them have not been COVID deaths. Most of those have been handled by hospitals or physicians. Noticing excess deaths, but not necessarily COVID related. It's just, I guess, luck of the draw. Deaths happen to be up this year, and he's got more responses. So those increase in expenses, some of that is covered by an increase in revenue. In this case, he's $7,880 short. And because that's a significant number for that department, and because this kind of meets the reason we have a contingency, we'll ask for $7,880 out of contingency. I'll cover all 3 of these all at once. So unless there's questions on that, I'll move on to information systems. Okay, information systems is also slightly over. There was a couple of maintenance agreements that were new this year. Again, information systems has some revenue from the contract with the city that covered some of that, but not quite enough of it. Telephone was a little bit higher. Now the telephone and the maintenance agreements have been taken care of in the future budgets as requested. We increased those to cover it. So this should be a one-time thing. But overall, the information services department needs $1,858 from contingency. Contingency right now is $73,800. If we take both of those out, we'll still have $64,062 left. And last, we have the sheriff's department. The sheriff's department is not over budget. They're not requesting any more. That's a $4 million budget, and routinely there are some changes between individual accounts. This year has been special. The jail in particular, if you don't have inmates, you don't have revenue coming in, but on the same side, the other side of that, if other counties aren't taking inmates, we're not paying for them. So there are a lot more transfers this year because of how that played out. So, and the other revenue was the school liaison officer. So overall, there's 161,000 to be moved from one account to another. And with all of that movement, they are still projecting to be well under budget. This is just taking care of the individual overs and unders. This isn't all of them. Again, with a $4 million budget, I just somewhat arbitrarily just picked everything over $5,000 and made transfers to those. The little ones really don't change much, and we would have probably 3 pages of requests for that. So that's all I have for the transfers. We would need a motion to approve all 3 of them. The coroner and information services, because they're under 20,000, would end right here. And then the sheriff's department, because of the dollar amount being over 20,000, would have to go to the board as a resolution.
I just have a question yet, Paul. So if we're doing a budget transfer and we're talking about the law enforcement side, public safety, if it's within their $4 million budget and it's just subsections, can't that just be managed within their department without having to have an official transfer request, if you will? If it's all within their 4 million and that's all the numbers they can play with, if they've got dog catchers over here and something's over there and is that what you're explaining that's happening essentially?
Yes. Can it? Yes. Some counties do it that way. Some counties put a limit on it. Right now, we don't have a hard written limit. It's just if you're over budget, you're supposed to ask for request.
Okay.
So 5,000, where I just went over 5,000 for the sheriff's department, that's a pretty small number. If I was over and under in the line of for 5,000, that would be more. The purpose of that is to not necessarily just budget for this and then spend it on something else. Can that change? Certainly. I think it's this committee that would then dictate that. But this is the process and the
That's true. You will see,
yeah.
you
You
can
always
see
will, yes.
somebody budgeting on this line item A and knowing that they're going to just slide it over to B if it's allowed and unchecked. I mean, that could happen easily. So,
That's why we're.
yeah, so this process
So
is,
this
yeah.
brings it up. And if we didn't do this and you say, okay, you have 4 million, spend it how you need to,
Yep.
they would
Yep.
spend it how they need to.
Yep.
So
Just wanted to clarify that.
I don't have a hard and fast rule of, okay, where do we need to do this? Where don't we? Just like, where do we take it out of contingency? Where do we just let it slide? At some point I will, percentage / dollar combination would make sense, but something for the highway department with its, $5-6 million budget versus, I think the coroner is the smallest one. Well, the
But it gives
coroner,
us an idea going
Yes.
ahead, like next year for budget on certain line items within a department. If they haven't been spending it and it just seems to be getting slid around, that maybe they don't need that in that line item and they need to clean up the other line
or
item.
even before that, they shouldn't be requesting it in line A if they always use it in line
Right.
B. And this list should be shrinking all the time. 2020 has been an exception. And for the sheriff's department, it absolutely has. The first one was quite a bit longer. Last year, I think, was down to a handful of account numbers. 2020 really changed the sheriff department in particular. But that's the idea behind it. If you need it somewhere so it's covered, good, but future budgets should reflect where you actually need to spend it rather than where you've been budgeting it.
Right.
And this is one of those tools to help do that.
Well, on the information services, is it only 1,800 and some change coming out of contingency and the other one's an internal transfer?
Yes, so they needed $4,958 in expenses. 3,100 was covered by them getting more revenue from the city, which left the 1,858.
It's coming out. And then the
Other conti-
coroner charges are all out of contingency?
No, they have some increase in revenue, so 56, 66, about 7,000 in revenue, because their work they do, they can bill for some of it, but it's not enough to cover the expenses. So of the 14, almost 15,000 that they were over, 7,800 is coming out of contingency. The rest is covered by expense, covered by revenue.
The 7,800 is all out of contingency.
Yes.
Any other questions? Okay, we need a motion and a second to approve the transfers.
I'll move.
Virginia, second by Jeff. Any questions? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carried. Moving on. Michelle, you're up.
Last month when I was here, we talked about that I would be back and that we would be looking at the tax fees. Remember, these are the people who have not paid their 2016 taxes. They just need to pay the 2016 to get off the list, and then we start the process potentially again next. We are down, I talked about one that I knew for sure was going last month. At this time, we still have these three that have not paid. What we normally do is, Jeff will draft a resolution and we put them all on there. I have been in contact with them, as I said, Asmus. For that one, they're waiting on unemployment. They're waiting to get that. They haven't received their checks yet for that. I'm calling and talking to them to see where we're gonna be. The next one is at Blonick, and that's the one we talked about last month. The one that they are at this point looking to walk away from that one. And the last one is with the caller. He will be coming in on the get his social security check the third Wednesday of the month. So you guys meet on the second Wednesday. So the third Tuesday for county board. So we're going to put it on there. That doesn't mean we take it. If he comes through by the end of the month, we will be taking we take his money. So I expect that one to be paid. It would. But I just thought I'd give you kind of a heads up. Again, I included a current tax bill, what is currently out there for each of the parcels that we have the current outstanding taxes, the tax bill, and then again, just a photo of the actual property. Okay. Any questions on that at all? We started at what, 48, I think, and we're down to 3.
What do we do on a property if it's, I guess if it were to be blighted, this appears to be a blighted property. There's no, obviously, if they walk away, they walk away. So we have to assume ownership, or how does that work?
Jeff, if you want to take over?
We don't have to take ownership. We've had, well, Marquette School is the best example. We were not going to take Marquette School, and the only reason we did is because the city approached us and they wanted to do something with it. If it's a property that looks like trouble, let's say an old gas station or
Right.
something, we're just not going to take it. So what I typically do is between now and the first year, I'll take a little road trip and kind of eyeball them to see if there's anything obvious about them. I do some queries. Usually with these houses, there's usually nothing out there you'll find. But I know there was a property in Algoma once. It was an old filling station. I actually did go on the DNR. There's a DNR site that talks about environmental review and so forth. And we were able to investigate that and figure out it was safe enough to sell. But if it's a property where like we're gonna get into real trouble here, and I think we only got almost burnt once, but that it was the crowbar in Algoma. We took it and then I broke into it and there was a huge hole in the middle of the roof and I'm like, oh boy. But we ended up selling that one. So we've been lucky over the years about getting rid of these places, but I try to do just a little bit of investigation. And if it looks like a lot of trouble, we just don't take it. You know, it's gonna sit there. And at some point, either we or the local municipality is gonna have to decide what we're gonna do with the place, but we don't have to take it.
Okay, because that's what I was worried about, was our liability on something. I mean, this isn't gonna be a high risk, but what if it were industrial or
Yeah.
something that,
And we haven't taken other ones in the past. If you knew they were last year, for example, we didn't take them because they were going to be, it got condemned.
Oh yeah, that's
They were
right.
condemned.
We
And
waited.
so we let the city take it down, and then we took it.
and I would suppose there would be a lawsuit going forward to that property owner, because you just can't walk away from your liability if that's the intention of them to walk away, you know, not pay your taxes, it's contaminated, I don't want to deal with it.
Yeah, and we have had a few properties over the years where the parties were trying to do exactly that, and we knew just because we knew where they were, they had the means, and they were just trying to walk
Wash
away.
your hands.
And we worked those out.
Good to know.
But yeah, but in the Blonick, he's passed away, so we'll see what happens.
Okay. Any other questions for Michelle? We need a motion and a second for a resolution to accept How do you want to put it? To accept, to take the properties? Okay. So we would need a motion and a second
I'll make
to
that motion.
take these, okay, by Jeff, seconded by Virginia. Any questions? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. All right. Okay. Voiding estate checks. Who's taking that one?
I'll take that one. Yeah. So, by state statute, every year we can look and see if we have checks that have been outstanding for 2 years or more, we can void them, and then we have a process to go through. But part of that process is to bring it to the finance committee saying, here's a list of checks that have not been cashed. The rest of that statute's a little odd, but essentially what we're going to do is these haven't been cashed. We can't get a hold of them, or they won't cash it for whatever reason. So we're going to void the checks, but by statute, we still have to hang on to them and make them available for the next for 6 years from the date of the check. So this year we have checks going back to 2018, 6 of them. We're bringing it to your attention, saying we're going to void these. The payee still has until 2024 to come get them and claim them if they want. We take an active role in trying to get them to cash them earlier. So, very slim chance that anybody's going to come after this point and come and get it. But by statute, we have to wait. So this is the list from this year. There's no action required by statute. It's just making you aware of it. And then we would then publish this list so that if somebody's looking for unclaimed property, they would see it.
How much does it amount to?
What's that?
How much does it amount to?
The 6 checks total $760.
Oh, wow. Pretty well.
And there's a few from the previous years remaining. That's a few $100s too. I'm not sure if that goes over 1,000 or not. Last year at this time there was I think 1,200 in checks. So not many out there. This is what we do by statute, and then we just once it reaches the 6 years, we just automatically write them off as uncashed checks revenue. That's all I have for that.
Approval of the bids for the Kewaunee Egg Land?
I've got the info here. Scott said you had the contracts written up.
I didn't bring them, but
Oh.
I can go over them.
Do we
So-
need a motion for approving those checks?
No.
Okay, the first property I want to talk about is the Stangerville Quarry property. This is the property just south of Stangerville where we're seeking to lease a portion of that to Bug Tussle for a tower site. That property is currently under lease to a gentleman by the name of Paul Bradley. In fact, he actually has 1 more year left on that existing lease. What we're trying to do is, number one, we want him to agree that we can put a tower on it, and in exchange for that, we're willing to extend his lease out basically under the same terms and conditions, and then it will also sync up with our other egg leases. So in effect, we're giving him a new 5-year lease starting in the first of the year for $100 an acre. This land on the east side of the road is the site of our quarry, and on the west side of the road, I suppose future quarry if needed. But on the west side of the road also is going to be the site for our tower. This farmland is somewhat marginal, I would say. Parts of it are fine, but it's kind of choppy. And also, it seems weird. It's on top of a hill, but for some reason, based on the flow of water, there's wet spots on it, if you can imagine. So Mr. Bradley is also going to put some, and he has done this over the years, put some field tile in there. So we're asking you to basically allow us to extend this lease for 5 years with Mr. Bradley, same terms, $100 an acre, and this allows us, number one, we can get our cell tower on there, and number two, Mr. Bradley's going to put some field tile on there. So that's what we're asking for. I think this cleans up a lot of issues we have. Mr. Bradley's been very good to work with, and we're happy to continue. Yes.
So did he agree to, with this agreement, with the
Yes.
5-year lease, he said fine for the tower on there?
Yes. He wanted to be able to hunt on it. Normally we don't do that, but I said, okay, you can hunt on it, but you have to stay away from the quarry and stay away from our tower. It's basically farmland, but I think on the far east side, there's some wooded area that's basically the neighbor's property. So if he milled around back there, I suppose maybe he could get a deer. So okay, that's fine. And then the other issue was he really didn't want to pay us anymore because he's going to put some of this field tile in. So he was on board with all of that. I think it's a good deal, and I'd recommend it because we're going to get 325 a month from this tower, whereas we're only getting $100 an acre
Yeah.
for farmland per year.
Now we're gonna get both.
Now we're going to get both.
Okay. Um,
So if you want me
We
to,
might as well take them one at a
okay,
time.
go ahead.
All right. Any questions on that? All right. We would need a motion and a second to accept the quote, the bid for that property for Paul Bradley.
I make a motion to accept the lease agreement,
Okay,
the Bradley property, or the Stangleville Quarry property.
yes. Okay, motion by Doak, seconded by Virginia. Any more questions? All right. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Next.
Next property is the Sikorsky Pit. This is in Croc on County Highway B, right?
Yep.
Okay, this land, I think it's an active quarry. Over the years, we've nibbled out more and more acreage, and what we have to do then is go back to Mr. Pagel and say, oh, all right, not Pagel family, I'm sorry, and say, hey, we're taking an acre, 2 or 3 at a time. So what we're proposing this time, and he was the high bidder at $178 an acre, is we're effectively going to reduce the tillable acres down to 28. Currently, there's somewhat more than that, maybe 30 some acres. But we're knowing that in the next 5 years, we're going to nibble that down to probably about 28. He bid $178 an acre. We're proposing to basically charge him based on 28 acres. We anticipate by the end of the lease, that's right where it'll be. This would eliminate the need to go to him every time we nibble a little bit of acreage off of that. Also, if we do, it also puts him on notice that we might take some land over time, and Todd and his department will keep him aware of the plans so that he doesn't plant in certain areas. But if he should, then we're not going to pay him any crop damage because we're telling him in advance which land we might take. He was I think he was the only bidder, in fact.
Yeah, he was the only one for that one.
But that's how we propose to handle that Sikorsky pit.
What's in there about nibbling, or taking land away and not having?
Yeah, Mr. Everkin.
I'll discuss that. So if you're familiar with the property, or maybe not, okay. So it's a farm field, uh, 80 some acres, maybe 100 total that we own there. And over the course of time, we have had an active quarry situation going on there. When the county had a crushing operation, we used to crush in there, and then we've gotten rid of that over the course of time. And then so we've been moving north and northwest in the quarry. We get basically gravel. We crush gravel out of there. We screen sand for winter salt sand, and then all of our asphalt plant materials that come out of there. So, and with the groundwater going up and down in that area, sometimes there's lots of water in the bottom of the pit, and sometimes there's not. So recently it's been up. So we've been staying up with the floor of the pit, and that means that we're going out, okay, a lot quicker than in years past. So from that standpoint, we go in there and we strip the topsoil, berm that up, and then take the materials out for crushing and screening and things like that. And that's what's been taking place over the last few years. So since I've been here and coming on 7 years, I think we've went back to them 2 or 3 times for sure and saying, hey, we need to make an adjustment to the contract as to how many acres they're paying for. And so what Jeff is saying, nibbling away at it right now, we're just anticipating that taking place over the 5-year contract. That, okay, we're going to agree on 28. He might get 30 next year that he's got crops in or whatever it is, but eventually it's going to be 28 and we don't have to come back to the board for approval all the time.
Okay, so he's agreed to a smaller acreage.
He gets to use the entirety of it, but he's only paying for 28.
That's the mechanism.
Yeah, and we're hoping that Mr. Every's projection is pretty good that at the end of this it'll be, and if we get below the 28 threshold, then we'll have to go to him and say, hey,
Okay,
But we're giving him extra on the front end.
on the front end.
And it's not like it's mega acres, it's just a few acres.
Right.
And depending upon where we're working, and when we take topsoil away, it's minuscule in our,
Pagel was renting this before?
Yes,
What were they doing before?
150.
This was up.
His concern was he wanted a little more certainty with this. We keep taking. One of the issues was, like you said, with the groundwater, didn't you have to move your driveway or something to take the access point? So yes, this is up from last time.
we probably had to, on our operations, 4 feet that we had to raise the floor in order to stay out of the water, and we still have water in some of those spots, but we can't, and that just causes us to go north and west a lot quicker.
Okay. If no other questions, we would need a motion to accept the bid of Pagels.
I make a motion to accept the lease agreement for Pagel, or for the Sikorsky pit.
Okay, motion by Doak, second by Tom. Any other questions? Hearing no other questions, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Last
Next
one's
one.
pretty straightforward. That's the land right behind the administration building here. It hasn't been out for bids before because we just acquired it. Mike Wisnicki is a high bidder, $225 an acre. There was a second bid from Pagels, 115 acre. But I recommend obviously Mr. Wisnicki to take it. And the lease will have provisions if we should need to take some land off of there for any building projects, that we can do so. But that's the bid. And I would recommend Mr. Wisnicki.
Okay.
How many acres is it again?
I think
It's right around 20 total, not precisely 20, but close enough.
And nobody's leasing it right now?
part of the deal is when we bought it from Mike, the deal was he was a reluctant seller, so we gave him favorable terms, and the other part of the deal was he basically could rent it for 2 years for $1. And that 2 years is come and gone, and now it's on the market. We got $1.
What were the two bids again?
225 for Mr. Wisnicki and 150 for Pagel. I think the issue there with Pagel is it's not really a good site to spread manure on, so it brings down the price.
And it's farther for him.
He's got to travel.
Okay. Any other questions? So we need a motion to accept this quote from Mike Wisnicki by Virginia, second by Doak. Any other questions for this? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Right.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right. Todd, you're up.
Good morning again. In front of you, and I also emailed this out last week, is some information in regards to purchasing a new triaxle truck chassis. This is something that we have in our capital improvement program every year to replace a heavy truck, a truck which hauls during the summertime, and we switch it over and plows during the wintertime. This is the truck chassis only, and the second page of information is the comparing of the truck chassis, an extended engine warranty, and a triaxle pusher axle with the total costs. And this year we received 7 bids. Usually we receive 5, but Peterbilt and Kenworth gave us a price this year. Um, so the you can see the type of truck chassis and the prices that we got from them. So trying to compare apples to apples as much as we can. The lowest responsible bidder and lowest bidder was Truck Country of Wisconsin with a 2022 Freightliner and total of 117,250. And so the recommendation, we reviewed this with the Highway Committee last week. They met all our minimum specifications. I didn't include that in the packet. We've got some minimum specifications that we have them meet. There's variances among the trucks with what they can provide with their standard packages or to meet our minimum specifications. So this is as apples to apples as I can get when in the review of those proposals. We've purchased five Freightliners so far in the last 4 years, and so this would be the 6th from that standpoint. And so that after review, the Highway Committee and the staff recommend purchasing the Freightliner chassis and warranty package for $117,250. This is not the total cost of the truck. I'll be back hopefully in January, amongst other things that we want to order, coming back with the truck equipment. So the plow, the wing, the dump box, the sander, and hydraulic package to run everything. It's going to be another $90,000 to $100,000. Yep.
So Todd, recognizing that this would be our 6th Freightliner, there are a couple other trucks that are within a few $1,000s between the Western Star and the Mac. Was there anything justifying that price that makes those a better truck?
You mean the Freightliner a better truck than the other two that are close?
Well, or the
that
other
what you're
two being a
asking?
better truck for the money. You know, they're more money, obviously, and if it's apples to apples and you're saying your recommendation's 117, I'm just curious how that Mac and that Western Star measure up.
Sure.
Truck to truck.
I'll do the best I can, not being a mechanic and whatnot, but knowing a little bit about trucks. So the 2021 Western Star, or the Western Star and the Freightliner, are basically the same truck. They're made by the same company. There's just some differences in the cab from that standpoint. They're not really much of a difference, okay, in there. The International, that's Packer City International with the 2021 HV 513. I don't mean to bash, but all the mechanics and are weary of the engine that's in that truck. With the changeover that happened back in the early 2010s with engines, we don't know if International has mastered the exhaust requirements. So there's been some issues there from that standpoint. And the other part of that is we've got nothing but positive things said about the Freightliners that we've been purchasing.
Well, and we're familiar with working on them and everything that goes along with it. So consistency that way, if it's working for us, why change?
Correct. We have a lot of Mack trucks that were in the fleet that prior administration had purchased, for lack of a better term, up until 2013, it was all Max. And we went from 2013 to 2017 before we bought new trucks because we didn't have any money. And finally, in 2017, we were able to purchase some trucks. And when we went out that time in 2017, we were looking to get some trucks in as soon as possible. And we ended up buying a Freightliner package off the lot. So a demo. And this has been the same chassis ever since, just different sizes. We bought 2 single axles, and then we bought 3 triaxles, and 1 tandem axle. So that's 6 trucks. This will be 7. Is that what we said before, John? 7?
Yeah, something like that. Now, do you, as a county, and we didn't talk about it at our meeting, but do you pay FET or not?
I'm sorry?
Do you pay FET?
No.
You don't, okay. So any other questions for Todd? If no other questions, I would ask for a motion to approve.
Also move.
Second. Yeah, seconded by Tom.
This comes out of the internal plans.
It comes out of the internal service fund, yes.
Yes, that's correct.
Even I knew that one.
It was budgeted, right?
It's every year we have a replacement of a heavy duty truck in our capital purchase program.
How this compared to how much you had budgeted?
Budgeting right around 225,000. So correct. Yep. It's actually, these chassis are, the Freightliners are like about $3,000 less than the last time we bid out. According to the salesman, Freightliner collected a bunch of data on their bids over the last year and a half, and they were finding that they needed to do some price adjustments. And this is reflective of the price adjustments after that analysis.
They'll get us somehow. They'll make it up.
Somebody.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Any additional questions? All right, being none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Extension. This one, I'll tell you what, if we could, it's marked as no action, okay? And we're gonna leave it that way. Scott can take it up next month. Approval of the 2021 insurance renewals.
Okay, this is normally a 30-second conversation. Two things are a little bit different. It's not going to be a long one, but so I was able to send this out Friday, a list of insurance and then the summary sheet for each one. Workers' comp, everybody knows what that is. It went up a little bit. That's because wages overall went up a little bit, and then we had 3 positions that were reclassified last year. So that's a major difference. Our workers' comp rate actually stayed the same as last year. So that one's pretty good. Liability, that'd be general liability, auto liability, everything else is in line with what it was the previous year. That covers, anything that may go wrong. The one in there that isn't terribly obvious, deductible fund deposit. What that means is we have $75,000 we have to keep with Aegis. So when a claim comes up and our liability or our deductible is $1,000, they take it out of there. And then at the end of the year, we just reimburse it. So this year we had 5,300 of reimbursements that have to go back into the account. I've seen that as low as 2,000 or 3,000. It was a 15,000 one year as well, depending on the claims we have and what work they have to do. And the additional insured is there's a few agreements out there with towers or if there's property we have somewhere else that somebody else is potentially going to have a loss as well. We just have to list them as also an insured, additional insured. And that's just a processing fee for that. Property insurance, every year we give them an updated list of buildings, contents, property in the open, which is things near buildings, but not really buildings, vehicles, equipment. And then that list based on the dollar value is premiums calculated. Boiler and machinery is actually a 2-year contract. This is outside of Aegis. That one, I believe, if not this coming year or next year, is going to be incorporated into the property insurance. So that one may go away soon. We wouldn't have a need for that one. But that one's already under contract. We'll make the payment this year, $2,600, which was already approved last year. Storage tank liability, that's for the highway department for their fuel tanks. It's up slightly from last year. It is down tremendously from a couple of years before, where I think it peaked out at 11 or 12,000 because the tanks had reached, how old were they? 30 years old, and that was the magic marker point where the premiums skyrocketed and they almost tripled in a matter of 2 years. Now with the new tanks in, it's back down to where it was before, but that's strictly for the highway and the fuel tanks. Yep.
And maybe just add for the committee, they're no longer in-ground tanks, they're above-ground tanks.
Yeah, that made a difference as well. The last one, I'll skip to the last one, position bond. That's our elected officials. By statute, we have to have them covered so they don't, I don't know, walk away with something. That's been the same dollar amount the 5 years I've been here. I'm gonna skip the public employee blanket until last, but one thing they offered this year, which I don't recommend buying, but I said I'd bring it up, is there's an identity recovery. This is the insurance coverage for our employees, so 158 employees. It costs $948. That's if somebody's identity is stolen. It helps them go through the process of getting their identity back. It does not cover the loss from getting your identity stolen. So if somebody lost $20,000 because somebody stole their identity, it doesn't cover that part of it. It does help them go through the process of repairing it, counseling of some kind in there too. I don't recommend it because this is an all or none. If an individual wants to this kind of coverage, they can go out and buy this kind of coverage. I don't see why the employer needs to do that. And then last, public employee blanket, also referred to as crime policy. This is where there's a difference this year. Our basic coverage is the same as last year, was $1,700. What was not in there, and what we were discussing with them was, we've had, and us and in general, there's been more fraud attempts, both on municipalities, businesses, individuals. So I asked for what was recommended, and they gave me 3 quotes, and one of them was wrong, so I don't have it here. So we can't finish this one necessarily today. But what we were looking for was coverage of if somebody fraudulently tries to take money from Kewaunee County. And I think it's important now more than ever because within the last year, year and a half, 2 years, we have had several attempts. This one's actually almost ingenious. You know, if I ask for your name and social security number, birth date, that throws up a red flag. The attempts we've had recently where it'll be an email from somebody posing as an employee. So we'll get an email that says they're Matt Josky. And it's all the names out we have on the websites, our department heads. And they'll say, hey, I'd like to change my direct deposit. Could you send me the form? So if you follow along, we send them the form, we get it back. No red flags go up because they didn't ask for anything. Now, instead of paycheck going to his account, it goes somewhere else. So, yeah, good thinking. But you're getting what, $2,000 at a time, maybe $3,000 if you hit the right person. In the last year now, several. There was a school district somewhere southeast Wisconsin, and there are others. Just mentioned another one where they're in building projects. So we're not talking $2,000. We're talking $800,000. Somebody posed as the general contractor, said, hey, your ACH payment should go here, not to the old one. And they made an $800,000+ payment to the wrong person. So our insurance wouldn't cover that right now. This will. We're talking a couple $1,000s. We've caught every single one of them here, but they're getting better and they're more frequent. We currently don't do ACH. I'm okay with that. The line has always been, well, ACH is better. You can avoid check fraud. Well, fraud on ACH is real, and it's almost as easy as those 2 examples have shown. So there was a gap, and it probably still is a gap right now in their insurance company. This would fill that in. The fraudulent impersonation would be just that. If somebody said, oh, hey, I'm your employee, could you move it here? The option 3, which is the one I think we need to go with, I don't have a price for that yet, also includes forgery or altercation. So that'd be for documents, checks. Inside premises theft. I'm not clear what that is, but if somebody steals something from here. And then the computer and fund transfer. That's the one we've been getting most of our attempts with. This would cover us for that, where right now there's that gap in coverage. So what I was hoping to have all of them today. there was an error on option 3, but that's the one I think we need to go with. So I would propose or I would request that we approve everything but the public employee blanket, not do the optional identity recovery. And then in January, we'll come back with public employee blanket. And these are due on the first of the year, but if we don't pay it until later, then we don't pay it until later. Yes.
What are the premiums compared to, total compared to last year for the ones we're renewing? Or how much increase is it?
We'll start with the big three: workers' comp, liability, and property. Last year it went up from 399 to 421, and it's a little bit on each one of them. 12,000 of that is workers' comp. And again, that's in large part because of the 3 reclassifications. Boiler and machinery has not changed. Storage tank is up $150. Public employee blanket, if we had the same coverage, is up $400, and position bond is exactly the same.
Okay, thank you.
So your recommendation is that we,
I would
We-
request approval for workers' comp, liability, property, storage tank, and position bond insurance. And we'll come back with the public employee blanket when we have the actual quote.
okay,
I make a
Go.
motion to approve all but the public employee blanket insurance premium or policies.
okay.
Second.
Seconded by Tom. Any more questions? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
All right.
All right.
Opposed? Motion carries. You all had a chance to look at the vendor payments and approve the supplemental payroll. I see that you all signed it. We would need a motion to approve the supplemental payroll.
Make a motion to approve
Second.
supplemental payroll.
All right, approved by Tom, seconded by Jeff. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
All right.
Okay, opposed, motion carried. Any other matters? Nothing, Tom?
Oh.
Why you gotta pick on Tom?
Well, you're looking around. I
No,
thought maybe-
not today.
All right.
Not today.
By the way, thank you very much for subbing last month.
You're welcome.
Did a fine job.
He
We
certainly
didn't wreck
did.
Too many things.
I listened to you, but I did comment.
The whole meeting?
Huh?
Did you hear us the whole meeting?
Yeah. I bowed out towards the end because there was stuff I didn't want to be involved in. So. All right. Next meeting. Our next meeting, that's one thing we didn't put on there, huh, Scott? How does the 8th sound for everybody? That would be the second Friday. I think the first Friday is asking Paul to be a little bit too efficient. We know you're efficient, Paul, but I'm not sure that one is that's asking too much of you. The second Friday good for you, the 8th? Yeah. All right. How about January 8th?
Okay.
Mr. Chair,
8 o'clock.
Yes.
with the amount of purchases that we have coming that need county board approval in January, will you then potentially have a meeting prior to the county board meeting in January? And I ask that because our highway committee meeting is after the 8th.
Correct. We can do that. Wouldn't do it for everybody, but for you, we'll do that.
Are we doing 8:30?
I prefer 8 o'clock. What do you guys say?
O'clock's fine. It's
8
just,
o'clock?
today was 8:30 because I have to take kids to school, so I couldn't have got here at 8 o'clock.
Oh, okay. 8 a.m. Actually, I'd like to do it at 7 a.m. like the highway does, but
Well, by the time I get here at 8, then you'll be looking for an adjournment.
Okay, January 8th, 8 AM,
What is
yes?
Todd asking for? Another finance meeting before the county board meeting?
Yeah, because the highway committee meets after the finance committee meets,
What
okay?
are we thinking, like an hour before the?
We're
Half an
probably
hour.
half an hour before, because I don't, unless something changes right now, and that, we'll know that by the 8th. But as of right now, I don't see that changing to drive that time up.
When is that meeting? What's the date?
26th, the next January county board.
26.
Yeah,
So we'll meet a half hour prior than 5:30.
right,
All the whole idea is just to approve Todd's, or the highway.
correct.
Oh, here, I got it on here already.
Okay.
So,
That's what I was thinking. I'd like to get that in there. So.
It's just that most of the purchases fall into they need to come through your committee here. Then, thank you.
That'd be at 5:30.
Yeah, the rule in play is.
Yeah, we've got a
for
6 o'clock meeting, we have 5:30.
I think for highway purchases, anything over 30,000 needs to come to finance and the board. Maybe at some point you take a look at that number and decide if that's the right number, but that's the rule of thumb. I think historically they didn't want the highway out there buying all kinds of stuff.
yeah, we'll be plowing with Prevos with a wing kit on it.
Okay, any other business? No other business?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Motion by Tom, seconded by Jeff. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right.
Opposed?